Hello, and thank you so much for joining us here at 3 News as we continue the conversations and the discussions surrounding Black History Month, as well as celebrating the change makers right here in our community. I'm Leslie Adami.
And I'm Josh Maxwell. I want to introduce you guys to our lovely panel of panelists, and I want to start with Sister Paula Grey. She wears many hats at St. Matthew Baptist Church. And I also want to introduce you to Mr. Jonathan Williams. He is the COO of the Boys and Girls Club here in Corpus Christi.
As well as Dr. Jaishree Ellis, who is a local healthcare hero. You are an OBGYN. You're also the president of our local AKA chapter. Thank you all so much. We know with your busy schedules, it really means a lot for y'all to spend some time with us here today and have those important conversations. The topics that we'll be covering today, touching on leadership, mentorship, and how we just continue lifting up our community, especially our youth, upward and onward here in the Coastal Bend.
And I really want to start with that topic you just mentioned, youth. Miss Paula Grey, I know you wear many hats at our church, and kind of just tell me a little bit about the different ministries you've been a part of and kind of just how that really helps with Black leadership and shaping our community.
The different ministries that I've participated in, or I still participate in, I work with the youth at our church. I work with our finance team and also on our women's ministry. But I also serve as, if someone just needs my help or assistance, then I'm in there. That's part of leadership. You just don't say I'm a leader and you don't micromanage. You actually just participate and you say, well, hey, I can lead from here. I'm a servant leader. So I have to serve who I lead. So people that are the youth at our church, I actually treat them as if they're on a level that I can talk to them. I meet them where they're at. And so that's part of leadership. If you're meeting people where they're at, not that you're elevated and you don't micromanage.
Yeah, I love that. And then obviously, of course, with the Boys and Girls Club of the Coastal Bend, you are around our local youth every single day and having, I know, meetings to continue to elevate them, like you mentioned. And what does that look like for you in your line of work?
So I look at it from a holistic standpoint when it comes to the youth, because as we know, with a lot of things like COVID and a lot of things that have kind of taken some of that foundation building away. So our focus is looking at what's missing, what do they need, and looking at the community, not just us as the Boys and Girls Club, but looking at the community, what we can do to fill those gaps, to help those foundation building, to make sure that we are building a set goals for these individuals to prosper, to make sure that they feel as if they are making a difference in the community, and they know that the things that they're doing is worthwhile, not only to the community, but to them as well.
And then Dr. Ellis, I want to talk to you about leadership, and we'll get into that with all of y'all as well, but y'all did touch on that in both of your answers. You are leaders in your line of work, as well as in the AKA sorority. So kind of wearing different hats, right, and fulfilling those different leadership roles. What do you feel are the most important values and characteristics of being a leader in the things that you do?
Leadership has so many components, and I believe that leaders actually are not born, but I believe that they are groomed. And I think that as leaders, we have to be teachable. We have to be willing to continue to grow. We have to be transparent with the people that we lead, with the people that we serve. We have to lead by example. We have to be strong communicators. We have to be able to have a vision. And we have to be able to steer whatever organization we represent in the direction of that vision. And we have to be able to inspire, because as leaders, people are looking to us and following what we do. And so we have to be able to inspire them. The work is the work, right? That's not the hardest part. The hardest part really can be the management of personalities, understanding your team, understanding what their strengths are, what their shortcomings may be, and as she referred to, meeting people where they are and really helping to bring out the best in them so that they show up with the desire to carry out the mission of your organization.
And when it comes to leadership, Dr. Ellis, I had done a story last year about how the black population in Corpus Christi only makes up 4%. And so when it comes to leadership roles and seeing our people in those roles, how important is it to have that representation in the black community?
It's critical. It's critical. It's so important that people are able to see themselves in someone else, and then they believe that this is possible. I think that they also get to see the example of how you carry yourself. If they are not in a situation where they normally would be surrounded by people who have done what you do, they need to see how to carry themselves. They need to see that even though you may have reached a certain level of success, you're still approachable, that there's still a human side of you. They need to learn that it is okay to be human, that we will make mistakes, but again, we have to be willing to continue to grow and strive to learn. They need to see the example of perseverance. And again, they need to see that in someone who may have experienced their life's challenges. Because if you don't have that, then you might not think that that person really understands, and maybe you really can't do what they can do.
And when it comes to leadership, especially in youth, all three of you with AKA, the Boys and Girls Club, the youth ministries at our church, when it comes to making sure that youth have that representation and know those examples, how important is it for the black community specifically to really see those examples and to see that somebody did it before me and I can do it for the next generation as well?
Critical. I would say it's critical. It's non-negotiable.
Yeah, I think another important factor when looking at that and representing and providing that leadership to these individuals as they're coming up, I think we've gotten away from a lot of stuff in society as far as being able to learn and grow and make mistakes. So we've unfortunately put ourselves in a situation where we put so much on our youth at times, they feel it's almost a no-fault mentality where they feel like they cannot mess up, and we have to be able to show our success, but also be transparent enough to show that we had faults as well. So you are going to be able to make space for those individuals, and it's safe to make those mistakes and be those leaders that can step in and guide them when that happens, and not let them feel that if they make a mistake that they're never going to be where they want to be, or they're not going to excel. So having that leadership role, also being transparent with them, I think is very important as well.
Would you also say that, I know in the black community, tough love is a very prominent.
Yes.
Miss Paul, I know growing up in the church, you with other members had a very firm hand in my upbringing, and kind of just how important is it, especially in our community, to really have that tough love mentality, and does it really help bolster our community as they grow older?
I believe tough love, when we giving tough love, we have to look at the difference of how we were raised at the age that I am, how you were raised at your age, and then I have younger grandchildren, how they're being raised. And each generation is not the same. They're different. My mom was really tough, and she could look at me and say, hey, and her look would let me know that, okay, stop right there. My children, I had to get close to them, and just say something to them, and then they knew, okay, stop. My grandchildren, it's now a why, how, what. And they ask that why because they want to know what is the factor, or what is behind the reason you're telling me this. And so sometimes tough love doesn't work for that generation, not for the younger ones, because they're going to ask you that why, how come, what for, and you have to give them that answer. I have a 9-year-old grandson, that why, and a 6-year-old, why. I tell them why, and they understand it better. For us in our generation, it was because I said so. And a lot of times because I said so didn't work, and we ended up touching that stove, and it was hot. Don't touch that stove. Why? Because I said so. Instead of saying, don't touch the stove because it's hot, you'll get burned.
So it seems that there's a more mindfulness component with this generation almost, and continuously asking why. Each of you are such wonderful and powerful leaders in our community, and I know that there's a lot of children and young adults out there that are watching what you do, and they're making notes and how you move, how you speak, and all the things that you do. So I want to go into mentorship, because I have to imagine that each of you are probably where you are now because you had people that lifted you up and mentored you. So talk to us about, you know, how important it is to kind of continue serving or step into that position now as a mentor for our community members.
We have to be willing to do that to make a difference, because there has to be a very personal level that you achieve with someone. You have to be intentional, and you have to explain to them the benefit of mentorship. A lot of times we don't know, and many times we came up in homes where we didn't have mentors, and no one said, you know, in our community they say, go out and just work hard. If you work hard, everything else is going to work out, which is true to an extent, but your success may be limited if there's not somebody who's looking out for you in the things, in the discipline that you work in or at school. Somebody who can say, hey, there's this opportunity over here, you need to look into that. Or someone who can pull you to the side and say, you know, I think what you're doing is not the best idea. Let's talk about other strategies. And someone who can say to you, what are your goals? Let's think about how you're going to achieve them. I think that is important for anyone who's going to reach a pinnacle of success. And so I think as leaders, I would think we all try to do that with young adults.
And when it comes to mentorship, with our generation, we have so many opportunities, sometimes that we even take for granted. Was it more difficult for you guys to kind of have those opportunities, or to even get to a place to where you could be mentored by somebody?
For myself growing up, it was hard to find specific mentorship, just because of the area I grew up in and trying to figure out what it is I wanted to do. There weren't really a lot of mentors in the community that I lived in. And I think that's what kind of helped me groom myself into what I knew I needed at that time. And as I grew older, figured out, okay, this is what I think I need to provide the community. So I purposely make myself available to as many people as possible, so that there aren't those gaps in mentorship in the community. Because as Dr. Ellis said, I mean, that's very huge for those people to have that, because we're not always going to know what's right, what's wrong, or how to move. And if you have someone that's, you know, advocating for you, kind of keeping you in line and helping you with those steps, it's very important for growth and success.
For me, mentorship for our youth, I take people to work with me. I've been on my job for 25 years. And so I take them to work with me. My grandsons, when I used to take them to school, on Mondays we have a conference call. It's every Monday, and it deals with nothing but leadership. And it's everybody in our company get on that call. It's 34 of us now. And we get on that call on Mondays. And I let them hear it over the car and let them listen to it. And they're like, you discuss this every Monday. Every Monday we talk about leadership. Every Monday we talk about mentorship. So I take them to work with me sometimes. And I'm like, okay, now you can do this job. And you start off here. They may start off shredding papers, or they may start off scanning files. But each step they'll learn, okay, this is how you started? Yes, this is how I started. Well, then who taught you this? And then I'll explain to them who taught me how to do an Excel spreadsheet, who taught me how to, and I pass that on to them. And even at church, you know, mentor, I want you to go sit on the drums. If we're required, sit on the drums. Somebody play the drums. Sit next to the person that's playing the organ. Sit next to someone that's teaching. And that encourages our youth and our young adults to just continue. Because if we don't encourage them, then they stand back and they become isolated and they won't go forward.
Yeah, and that kind of actually, there's something there that you mentioned that made me wonder, you know, what would be y'all's advice for people, young adults here in our community that feel as though, oh, someone else is taking care of that. Someone else is doing it. I don't have to step in. Someone else will step up. So what would be y'all's advice to that person?
My advice would be mentorship is everyone's job. You could have individual youth that has 2 or 3 people in their corner working with them. There's never enough. If you feel like there's something you can do it. Don't feel as if someone has everything they need. If you can provide a service, as she was saying, servant leadership, if you can feel you can do something, step in and do it. My advice would just be step in. There's never too many people helping out individuals.
And when it comes to mentorship, do you feel that it's helped all of you get to the positions that you're currently in today?
Yes.
Most definitely.
Yes.
It took me a long time to accept a mentor. When I first got to work, I didn't realize that there were people trying to mentor me. Like, I thought, I'm just supposed to show up and work. I didn't understand why sometimes another doctor would invite me out for coffee, and I'd be like, what does she want? But I now realize that those people were extending a hand to me, and they understood that it wasn't just about learning the medicine. There were a lot of other nuances I would need to learn. And so it took me a long time to figure out that I needed that. And that's part of why I'm so passionate about it. And I tell young people, look for mentors. Ask people if they will mentor you. And you can have more than one. And be receptive to when someone is paying attention to you and inviting you out, because they really may want to kind of take you under their wing and help you.
It's such a beautiful feeling to feel somebody invest in you as a person and also in your career. So I'm really happy that you touched on that, because that's such a unique perspective, hearing from somebody that at first did not accept that and then kind of grew to realize how valuable that is. So thank you for sharing that. Kind of bringing it back home here to Corpus Christi, I want to get into, what would y'all say are some of the biggest issues that may be facing Black residents here in Corpus Christi and the greater Coastal Bend area as a whole?
So I've actually been in Corpus Christi since 2019. I'm not originally from here. And kind of getting ingrained to the community, my first kind of iteration of figuring out what the community is about and what we're doing was going through Leadership Corpus Christi. And as I'm going through the program and getting exposed to different areas and seeing what the Black community is doing and what things are available for people of color in Corpus Christi, you start to see there are, for me, from my perspective, there were different gaps that were available for me to step in and do things. So I would put it in a perspective of trying to figure out what the youth are doing now and what are something that you can see them doing. And I think we as a community just need to build that together to fill those gaps, regardless of what it may be, because what I see and what these other two individuals see may be different. But if we come together as a group, we can expound upon that and make it better.
I would have to say to come, just as he said, to come together. We do things so much separately and individual, but if we come together as a group, we can direct and lead and mentor our youth. Because for me, I'm not originally from here. I've been here since 2010. And for me, it was just hard getting acclimated because there was not that many. And then I didn't know, because I had 2 young children and I'm raising 2 of my grandsons, and I was like, okay, where do I take them for this? Boys and Girls Club became a very big part of their lives. Church became the extra big part. And that's where I found my community, was at church. And then I started finding out different things, places to go, people to meet. And that was part of one of the things. It was like, okay, there's so much separation, well, why is that like that? And so I try to include, if I can, if I say, come on, let's go. We're going here, let's go to the baseball game. Let's go here, let's go there. And I try to include as many as I can. Let's go.
Okay.
Because you never know what that one invitation, right, could lead to. And I know for the AKA sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha, obviously it's a sisterhood, right? But I know such a huge component of what y'all do is also service related. Talk to us about, whenever you have these different events that you're bringing these members together, but also it's an opportunity, I imagine, to bring members of the community to be part of, X service project.
Absolutely. Our motto is service to all mankind. So, you join the sorority for sisterhood, but service is a huge part of it in college and then after. And certainly afterwards, that's most of it. I think that we look for different opportunities to serve our community. Where is there a need? A lot of times, some of that is driven by our national organization, and they'll have specific initiatives they want us to focus on. So everything that we do is related to service, whether that's fundraising for scholarships, or we'll go to the food bank. We may do something at the shelter. Where every month we're doing one or two things at least. Those things will be free to the community, and they have a purpose. And we want to connect and serve the community.
When it comes to what you were mentioning earlier, Ms. Paula, kind of just talking about how the church and the youth kind of just were a big part of you getting acclimated to the area. When you guys are in these leadership roles and you're mentoring, passing the torch, one thing we've also even noticed here at the news is that these younger generations can be a little hard to kind of manage. And so sometimes it's more difficult to pass on that torch because some people aren't receptive, or as we've talked about at church, there's a possibility that there may not be a generation to inherit the talents and the abilities that you guys are trying to pass on. So how do you guys navigate that hurdle of trying to, in a sense, kind of put that baton into the next generation's hands?
I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed is, I think it's just because of things that are going on in society now. It's hard for youth to trust. And I think she put it best is you have to meet them where they're at. So you have to learn this individual to understand how you can reach them. Everybody's not going to be reached the same way. So in order to gain that trust, you need to learn the individual and meet them where they're at. Your idea of what they need is not going to always resonate to them. So you need to figure out what's in it for them and meet them there. And I think that's how we can pass the torch, is by, like you said, meeting them where they're at, by understanding the individual.
And then something I also want to talk about, because we do have the 89th Texas legislature happening right now at our state capitol. Are there any issues that you feel directly or indirectly impact the Black community that should be being discussed at the state level right now?
Funding for so many things, but funding for anything that's education related, funding for things like after school programs. These are oftentimes where children start to learn about teamwork and leadership and responsibility. This is often where they'll connect to adults who can be mentors or big sisters or big brothers. And so I think we need more and more funding for that, not less.
I think more funding for education, because children are learning. They learned. And if you're teaching them one thing, just say a standardized test. But if you're teaching just the test and Mary can't read, then she's not learning. And I think education is really, really important. You need to see who's in your class. Sometimes kids have to learn maybe in a small group, or some can help with it. They can mentor one of their classmates, but it has to be, we need more funding for education. We need to pay our teachers more. Our teachers need more, and they need smaller classrooms to work better with the kids. Because the children that we have coming up, sometimes they get frustrated and they shut down. They will not go any further. And so then now the teacher has to figure out what's wrong. But she has 20 other students that she has to go in there and say, hey, I got to stop with this one, and I got to stop for this. And they don't have the time for it. And I think we have to, as parents, as grandparents, as aunts, uncles, we have to get in there and advocate. We have to help the teacher. We can't just go in there and say, oh, not my child. No, we have to get in there and we have to really advocate for the children that no student left behind, no child left behind. That is so untrue. There are children that are left behind.
And when it comes to keep it on state and legislative, diversity and inclusivity, especially for our people, how important is that to use to have those spaces?
another critical thing. I think that the first thing we need to know, and the public needs to know, when we talk about diversity, diversity brings strength, right? Because everyone has a different life's experience. Everyone has a different way of problem solving. Everyone has a different way of connecting to others. And it's that complement of people that makes an organization successful, or that makes a society successful. If we all have the same strengths and the same weaknesses, we don't innovate, we're not resourceful, we don't get any further. But it's diversity that makes us stronger. So that's the first thing to know. The second thing to know is that I think that African American people are very, very resilient people, and I think that's something that society doesn't always understand. So I think you can give someone a very hard situation and they persevere through it, and I think because historically we've had to.
And as we kind of get near to the end of our panel, I want to ask you guys, looking ahead, looking forward to the future, what types of legacies do you want to leave for the next generation?
A legacy of service, of helping others, because that's how we get ahead as a society.
I think kind of what Dr. Ellis is saying is leaving that legacy of success. Like, we are capable. We have overcome. There are things that we were told we couldn't do, and we're still doing it. And I think with everything that's going on right now, and everybody's kind of taken aback on some of the changes that are happening, and we've shown that we can persevere through it. So I think our legacy is showing that no matter what the changes are coming, no matter what obstacles are put in our way, to show that we can overcome it and we can do it together.
I believe no fear. Keep forging ahead. I want you to be able to stand tall, stand strong in your conviction, in your belief, and move forward with it. When people fear, they kind of just stand back and they just drop their shoulders and they get nervous, but don't have no fear, because you can make the mistake and learn from it and move forward. So no fear, and keep moving forward. Keep forging ahead.
That's beautiful and so powerful. And just to wrap things up here, and kind of to piggyback off of Josh's question, just to end things, what, in your own words, what does Black History Month mean to each of you?
I'll sum it up very easily. Black history is American history. And I say that because of the way this country was built. It was built through Black history. So Black history is American history.
Black history is my history. And it's the history that my children has to take forward. It's the history that I received from my grandparents and my great-grandparents and my mom and my dad. So that's the history I want to pass on to my children. So, and I want them to pass it on. So traditionally, with storytelling and with books that we read, and know who and where you came from. Know who you are and know where you came from.
Black history is a celebration of what Black Americans have brought to America in its establishment, in its growth, and what we bring today.
All right, all great answers. We very much appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to visit with us, very prominent leaders in our community, and just we appreciate the work you do, and of course we appreciate you taking time to speak with us today.
Yeah, really insightful conversations that I think everyone will be able, that watches this, will get to take a little something, actually hopefully multiple somethings from this conversation, because I know Josh and I are going to walk out of this room and go to the newsroom and ready to run through a wall because of the insightful and inspiring things that y'all have shared with us today. So thank you so much for that conversation. And just for you at home, thank you also so much for being part of this conversation with us as well. It's just part of one of the many special segments that we are going to be in, conversations that we are going to be having over the course of this Black History Month right here on 3 News.
All right, and always make sure to keep it here on TV3. And again, thank all of you guys for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.